Marcus Chen adjusted his environmental suit as he stepped off the transport shuttle onto Station Nix 7, humanity's newest research outpost orbiting a dying red dwarf star. The artificial gravity felt lighter than Earth's, making each step feel like a gentle bounce. Around him, the bustling station hummed with activity as scientists, traders, and explorers from dozens of species went about their business. The young xenobiologist had volunteered for this assignment, partly for the research opportunities, but mostly to escape the suffocating expectations of his family back on Earth. Here, surrounded by the vast emptiness of space and alien cultures, he could finally be himself without judgment. As he made his way through the crowded marketplace section of the station, Marcus noticed the conversations around him gradually dying down. Beings who had been chattering animatedly moments before now spoke in hushed whispers, their eyes darting nervously toward something behind him. He turned to see what had captured everyone's attention, and felt his breath catch in his throat. Moving through the crowd with fluid, predatory grace was the most striking being he had ever encountered. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, with alabaster skin that seemed to glow under the station's artificial lighting. Her hair was silver white, flowing like liquid mercury past her shoulders. But it was her eyes that held him captive, deep crimson orbs that seemed to look directly into his soul. The being's attire was both elegant and practical, a form-fitting black bodysuit that accentuated her lithe form, with intricate silver patterns that seemed to shift and move in the light. As she passed, Marcus caught a glimpse of elongated canine teeth when she smiled at something her companion said. "That's Lady Serafina Vex," whispered Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Marcus's new research partner who had appeared beside him. "She's one of the Sanguinari, what you humans call vampires in your old stories. They're an ancient spacefaring race that feeds on life energy rather than blood, though the old Earth legends got surprisingly close to the truth." Marcus watched as Serafina paused at a vendor's stall, examining some kind of crystalline artifact. Her movements were hypnotic, each gesture precise and purposeful. When she laughed at something the vendor said, the sound was like silver bells chiming in a gentle breeze. "Why is everyone so afraid of her?" Marcus asked, noting how other beings gave her a wide berth. "The Sanguinari are apex predators," Yuki explained quietly. "They're stronger, faster, and more intelligent than most species. They can live for millennia, and they have abilities that border on the supernatural. Most importantly, they form bonds with other beings that can last lifetimes, but those bonds are incredibly rare and usually involve some form of servitude." Marcus found himself unable to look away as Serafina completed her transaction. As if sensing his gaze, she turned in his direction. Their eyes met across the crowded marketplace, and Marcus felt something electric pass between them. She tilted her head slightly, studying him with obvious curiosity, before a small smile played at the corners of her mouth. Then she was walking toward him, and Marcus felt his heart rate increase dramatically. Every instinct told him to run, but he found himself rooted to the spot. The crowd seemed to part before her like water before the prow of a ship. "You're staring," she said when she reached him, her voice carrying a slight accent he couldn't place. It was melodious and warm, nothing like the cold, threatening tone he might have expected from a legendary predator. "Sorry," Marcus managed, feeling heat rise to his cheeks. I've never seen a Sanguinari before. I'm Marcus Chen, xenobiologist. Just arrived on the station today." "Serafina Vex," she replied, extending a pale hand. When Marcus shook it, her skin was surprisingly warm, and he felt a slight tingling sensation where they touched. "A scientist. How refreshing. Most beings either flee in terror or try to impress me with displays of bravado. Should I be fleeing in terror?" Marcus asked, surprising himself with his boldness. Serafina's laugh was genuine and delighted. "That depends entirely on your perspective on risk, Dr. Chen. Tell me, what brings a human xenobiologist to the edge of civilized space?" As they talked, Marcus found himself drawn deeper into conversation with the enigmatic being. Serafina was incredibly knowledgeable about numerous scientific fields, having lived long enough to master several disciplines. She spoke of distant worlds and ancient civilizations with the casual familiarity of someone who had actually been there. "You know," Marcus found himself saying as their conversation continued, "the old Earth legends about vampires always talked about them being irresistible to humans. I'm beginning to understand why." Serafina raised an elegant eyebrow. "Are you flirting with me, Dr. Chen? That's either remarkably brave or spectacularly foolish." Maybe both, Marcus admitted. I've always been told I have poor survival instincts. Interesting. Serafina studied him with those penetrating red eyes. And what would you say if I told you that the legends also spoke of vampires forming eternal bonds with mortals? Bonds that transcend death itself? Marcus felt his pulse quicken. There was something in her tone that suggested this wasn't merely academic discussion. I'd say that sounds both terrifying and fascinating. Indeed. Serafina moved closer and Marcus caught a scent like night-blooming flowers mixed with ozone. The sanguinari do not form such bonds lightly. In my 3 centuries of existence, I have never found a being worthy of such a connection. The implication hung in the air between them. Marcus knew he was standing at a crossroads. He could walk away now, return to his safe, predictable life of research and academic pursuits, or he could take a leap into the unknown. What if, he said slowly, someone was willing to take that risk? What if someone was confident they could win your heart before you won theirs? Serafina's eyes widened slightly, and then she smiled, expression that was both predatory and genuinely amused. Are you proposing a wager, Dr. Chen? Maybe I am, Marcus replied, his scientific mind already fascinated by the possibilities. A test to see whether human determination and ingenuity can match sanguinari allure and power. You realize, Serafina said softly, that if you lose such a wager, the consequences would be permanent? The bond between our kinds once formed cannot be broken. You would be mine for as long as you draw breath and possibly beyond. Marcus looked into those crimson eyes and saw something he hadn't expected: hope. For all her power and immortality, Serafina seemed lonely, isolated by her nature and abilities from meaningful connections with others. And if I win? He asked. Then I suppose I would be yours, she replied. Though I wonder if you truly understand what you would be winning. Marcus extended his hand. I guess we'll find out together. Serafina looked at his offered hand for a long moment, then clasped it in both of hers. The tingling sensation intensified, and Marcus felt something fundamental shift in the space between them. Very well, Dr. Marcus Chen, she said formally. I accept your wager. May the most persuasive being win. The next few weeks on Station Nix 7 took on a surreal quality for Marcus. Word of his wager with Serafina had spread quickly through the station's gossip network, earning him everything from admiring glances to concerned warnings from fellow researchers. Most beings seemed to think he was either incredibly brave or completely insane. Marcus threw himself into his work with renewed vigor, studying the unique properties of the red dwarf system, while simultaneously researching everything he could find about sanguinari culture and biology. If he was going to win Serafina's heart, he needed to understand what he was dealing with. The sanguinari, he learned, were indeed ancient beyond human comprehension. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still learning to make fire. Their society was built around concepts of honor, strength, and eternal bonds that transcended individual mortality. They fed not on blood but on life energy itself, a process that was typically fatal to the donor unless carefully controlled. What fascinated Marcus most was discovering that the sanguinari were capable of forming symbiotic relationships with other species, sharing their extended lifespans and enhanced abilities in exchange for companionship and life energy. These bonds were extraordinarily rare, occurring perhaps once in a sanguinari's lifetime, if at all. Meanwhile, Serafina had begun what could only be described as a subtle campaign of seduction. She would appear at his laboratory during his work shifts, ostensibly interested in his research, but always managing to distract him with casual touches, meaningful glances, and conversations that seemed to layer deeper meanings beneath innocent words. Your work on stellar radiation patterns is quite impressive, she said one afternoon, leaning over his shoulder to examine his data displays. Her proximity made it difficult for Marcus to concentrate on anything, except the warmth radiating from her body and that intoxicating floral scent. Thank you, Marcus managed, trying to focus on the scrolling numbers. I'm particularly interested in how the radiation affects the development of extremophile organisms in this system. Extremophiles, Serafina mused, her breath warm against his ear. Beings that thrive in conditions that would destroy others. Rather like the sanguinari, wouldn't you say? Marcus turned in his chair to face her, finding himself inches from those mesmerizing red eyes. Is that how you see yourself? An extremophile? Among other things. Serafina's finger traced a light pattern on his workstation's surface. We adapt to survive in environments that would be hostile to most forms of life. Vacuum, extreme temperatures, hostile radiation. These things are merely inconveniences to us. And loneliness? Marcus asked quietly. Do you adapt to that as well? Something flickered across Serafina's expression, too quick for Marcus to fully interpret, but he thought it might have been vulnerability. Loneliness is more challenging, she admitted. It's difficult to form meaningful connections when you know you'll outlive them by centuries. Marcus stood, closing some of the distance between them. What if you didn't have to outlive them? The bond I spoke of, Serafina said slowly, extends a mortal's lifespan significantly. Centuries, possibly millennia, but it also creates a dependency that many find uncomfortable. Because the human becomes subordinate to the sanguinari. Because the human becomes part of the sanguinari, she corrected. Their thoughts, emotions, even their life force become intertwined with their bonded partner. Some beings find this loss of individual autonomy terrifying. Marcus considered this carefully. The scientist in him was fascinated by the biological and psychological implications, while the human part of him wondered if he was prepared for such a fundamental change to his existence. What do you get out of it? He asked. Besides companionship? Serafina's smile was enigmatic. Perspective. Humans experience life with an intensity that comes from knowing it's finite. You burn bright because you know the flame won't last forever. For a being who measures time in centuries, that intensity is intoxicating. Over the following days, Marcus began to notice changes in himself. His dreams were filled with images of distant worlds and ancient civilizations. He found himself craving foods he'd never tried before, drawn to music that resonated in frequencies he shouldn't have been able to hear. Most disturbing, he began experiencing moments of what felt like shared memories, glimpses of experiences that couldn't possibly be his own. Dr. Tanaka noticed his distraction during one of their research sessions. Marcus, you need to be careful, she warned. The bond doesn't require conscious acceptance from both parties. If Serafina is already beginning to influence you, the connection might be forming whether you're aware of it or not. This revelation troubled Marcus deeply. Was what he felt for Serafina genuine attraction, or was it merely the result of some alien influence on his mind? The thought that his feelings might not be entirely his own was disturbing, but it also strengthened his resolve to understand exactly what was happening to him. He decided to confront Serafina directly about his experiences. He found her in the station's observation deck, standing before the massive viewport that offered a stunning view of the dying red dwarf and its surrounding nebula. She seemed to sense his presence without turning around. You're experiencing the resonance, she said softly, the first stage of the bonding process. Are you manipulating my mind? Marcus asked bluntly. Serafina finally turned to face him, and he was surprised to see something that might have been pain in her expression. No more than you're manipulating mine, she replied. The bond forms naturally between compatible beings. It cannot be forced or faked. Then what I'm feeling is real. What you're feeling is real, she confirmed. But it's also dangerous. If the bond completes without conscious acceptance from both parties, it can destroy the weaker partner's sense of self entirely. Marcus moved to stand beside her at the viewport. Then why are you letting it continue? Because, Serafina said quietly, for the first time in 3 centuries I'm experiencing something I never thought possible. Which is? Hope. She looked at him directly. Hope that I might not have to spend eternity alone. But I won't take that choice from you, Marcus. If you want to end this wager now, I'll break the connection before it becomes irreversible. Marcus felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He could walk away now, return to his normal life with nothing more than some interesting memories and perhaps a few lingering side effects. Or he could continue down this path, knowing that it would fundamentally change who he was. What would it mean, he asked, to be bonded with you? We would share everything, Serafina explained. Thoughts, emotions, experiences. My lifespan would become yours and your intensity would become mine. We would be 2 beings existing as one consciousness with 2 perspectives. And if I won our wager, if I made you fall in love with me first? Serafina's laugh was soft and slightly sad. Then you would discover that winning and losing are sometimes the same thing. Marcus Chen. The bond works both ways. I would be as dependent on you as you would be on me. Marcus looked out at the dying star. its red light casting everything in warm, bloody tones. Somewhere in that light, he thought he could see the future spreading out before him like a vast, unexplored territory. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. "I want to continue," he said finally, "but I want us to be equals in this. Not master and servant, not predator and prey. Partners." Serafina reached out and took his hand, and Marcus felt the familiar electric tingle intensify. "I've never been anyone's equal before," she admitted. "I'm not sure I know how." "Then we'll figure it out together," Marcus replied, squeezing her hand gently. "After all, humans are pretty good at adapting to extreme conditions, too." Marcus discovered that courting a centuries-old predator required unconventional approaches. Traditional human romantic gestures seemed almost quaint when directed toward someone who had witnessed the birth and death of star systems. Instead, he decided to appeal to the scientist and explorer that lived beneath Serafina's elegant exterior. His breakthrough came during a routine survey mission to collect samples from the system's asteroid belt. The small research vessel he piloted contained sophisticated scanning equipment designed to analyze mineral compositions and detect signs of unusual life forms. What it found instead was something that made Marcus's heart race with excitement. "Serafina, you need to see this," Marcus called over the comm system when he returned to the station. His voice carried an enthusiasm that immediately caught her attention. She arrived at his laboratory within minutes, moving with that characteristic fluid grace that never failed to mesmerize him. "What has you so excited, Dr. Chen?" Marcus gestured toward the holographic display he had activated above his workstation. Suspended in the blue light was a three-dimensional representation of an asteroid, but this was no ordinary space rock. Embedded within its structure were geometric patterns that clearly suggested artificial construction. "It's a derelict," Marcus explained, his eyes bright with discovery. "But look at these energy readings. Whatever civilization built this, they were using technology I've never seen before. The power source is still partially active after what appears to be millions of years." Serafina moved closer to the display, her expression shifting from casual interest to intense focus. "These patterns? I've seen something like this before, but only in the oldest archives of my people. This predates even sanguinary civilization. I want to explore it," Marcus said. "A full archaeological survey. Think about what we might learn about the early development of spacefaring cultures." "It's dangerous," Serafina replied immediately. "Ancient technology can be unpredictable. Many ruins contain automated defense systems that remain active long after their creators have vanished." Marcus turned to face her fully. "Come with me." The simple words hung in the air between them, carrying implications that went far beyond a research expedition. Serafina stared at him, clearly surprised by the invitation. "You want me to accompany you on an archaeological survey?" she asked slowly. "I want you to be my partner in discovery," Marcus clarified. "Not because I need protection, but because I think you'd find it as fascinating as I do." "When was the last time you encountered something truly unknown?" Serafina was quiet for a long moment, studying both Marcus and the holographic display. "It's been a very long time," she admitted. "Most sanguinari avoid unknown ruins. We prefer to deal with predictable threats. But you're not most sanguinari, are you?" Marcus challenged gently. "You're here on a research station at the edge of civilized space, making wagers with strange humans instead of ruling some conquered world like your people's legends suggest." "Those legends are somewhat exaggerated," Serafina said with a slight smile. "But you make a valid point. I have always been considered somewhat unconventional by my people's standards. So you'll come?" "Against my better judgment, yes." The expedition required careful planning and specialized equipment. Marcus insisted on treating Serafina as a full research partner, rather than simply additional muscle for the mission. He was delighted to discover that her centuries of experience had given her knowledge in fields, ranging from xenoarchaeology to theoretical physics. The energy signatures suggest a form of zero-point field manipulation, Serafina observed as they reviewed the technical specifications. If that's accurate, this civilization achieved technologies that most current species only dream about. Could it be dangerous? Marcus asked. Anything capable of manipulating zero-point fields could potentially create or destroy matter at the molecular level, Serafina replied. We'll need to be extremely careful about what we touch. As they worked together to prepare for the expedition, Marcus began to see new aspects of Serafina's personality. Away from the social dynamics of the station, She revealed a genuine intellectual curiosity that matched his own. She asked thoughtful questions, offered insights based on her vast experience, and demonstrated a quick understanding of human scientific methods. More importantly, Marcus noticed that the strange resonance he'd been experiencing was becoming stronger, but also more stable. Instead of the disorienting flashes of alien memories, he was beginning to sense Serafina's emotions and thoughts in a way that felt natural, rather than invasive. "The bond is stabilizing," Serafina observed during one of their planning sessions. "You're adapting to it remarkably well. Is that unusual? Most beings experience significant psychological distress as the bond forms," she explained. "They fight against the connection, which creates feedback loops that can damage both partners. You seem to be accepting it as a natural process." Marcus considered this. "Maybe it's because I'm approaching it like a scientist. Instead of fighting the unknown, I'm trying to understand it. Or maybe," Serafina said softly, "it's because you genuinely want to be connected to me." The comment caught Marcus off guard with its vulnerability. For all her power and confidence, Serafina seemed surprised by the idea that someone might actually want to be close to her. "Of course I do," Marcus replied simply. "Why would that surprise you?" "Because most beings fear me," Serafina admitted. "Even those who find me attractive are usually motivated by the thrill of danger, rather than genuine affection." Marcus reached out and took her hand, feeling the now familiar tingle of their connection. "I'm not most beings." "No," Serafina agreed, her red eyes studying his face intently. "You're really not." The day of their expedition arrived with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Their ship was a compact but well-equipped research vessel designed for extended surveys. As they approached the ancient derelict, both Marcus and Serafina fell silent, awed by the structure's alien majesty. The asteroid had been hollowed out and transformed into something that was part space station, part temple and part technological marvel. Crystalline structures jutted from its surface like frozen lightning, while geometric patterns covered every visible surface in designs that hurt to look at directly. "It's beautiful," Marcus breathed. "It's terrifying," Serafina countered, though her voice carried a note of fascination. "I can feel power emanating from it even at this distance." As they docked with the structure, Marcus felt the bond between them pulse with shared anticipation. Whatever they found inside this ancient place, they would discover it together. For the first time since accepting the wager, Marcus realized that winning Serafina's heart was becoming less important than simply sharing these moments of wonder with her. "Ready?" he asked as they prepared to enter the derelict. "With you," Serafina replied, checking her equipment one final time. "I'm beginning to think I'm ready for anything." The airlock cycled and they stepped into the unknown together, partners in discovery and something deeper that neither of them was quite ready to name. The interior of the ancient derelict defied every expectation Marcus had formed during their approach. Instead of the dark, abandoned corridors he had anticipated, they found themselves in a vast chamber filled with soft, pulsing light that seemed to emanate from the crystalline walls themselves. The air was breathable, maintained by systems that had been functioning for eons without any apparent maintenance. "This is impossible," Marcus whispered, his voice echoing strangely in the cavernous space. "The power requirements alone should have exhausted any energy source millions of years ago." Serafina moved beside him with cautious grace, her enhanced senses alert for any sign of danger. "Not impossible," she murmured. "Just beyond our current understanding. Look at the way the light patterns move, they're not random. This entire structure is still actively processing information." As they ventured deeper into the installation, Marcus became increasingly aware of the bond between them intensifying. What had been a gentle connection now thrummed with shared sensations and emotions. Through their link, he could feel Serafina's mixture of excitement and wariness, while she could sense his wonder and scientific curiosity. The central chamber they eventually reached took their breath away. Suspended in the middle of the room was a sphere of pure energy, roughly 10 feet in diameter, that rotated slowly while displaying shifting patterns of light across its surface. Around it, concentric rings of what appeared to be crystallized space itself orbited in complex geometric arrangements. "It's a memory core," Serafina breathed, recognition dawning in her voice. "But one unlike anything I've ever encountered. The Sanguinari have legends of the Primarchs, the first spacefaring civilization that seeded the galaxy with knowledge and technology. This could be one of their archives. Marcus approached the floating sphere cautiously, his scanning equipment registering energy readings that shouldn't have been possible. If this is what I think it is, we're looking at a database that could contain the accumulated knowledge of an entire galactic civilization. As he drew closer, the sphere's rotation slowed, and the light patterns began to coalesce into recognizable forms. Images flickered across its surface, star maps, technological schematics, and what appeared to be historical records stretching back millions of years. Marcus, "Be careful," Serafina warned, but her voice carried fascination rather than fear. Through their bond, he could feel her own burning curiosity about what secrets the ancient archive might contain. When Marcus's hand came within inches of the sphere's surface, something unexpected happened. The energy construct suddenly pulsed brighter, and tendrils of light reached out to touch both him and Serafina simultaneously. Marcus felt a moment of disorientation as information flooded through the bond they shared, carried by the ancient technology. Suddenly they were no longer standing in the chamber. Instead, they found themselves experiencing shared visions of the galaxy as it had existed eons ago, when the Primarchs had walked among the stars. They saw great cities that spanned entire solar systems, technologies that could reshape matter at the quantum level, and civilizations that had achieved harmony between biological and artificial intelligence. But more than that, they experienced the emotions and thoughts of the Primarchs themselves. Marcus and Serafina felt the weight of cosmic responsibility, the loneliness of being the only truly advanced civilization in the galaxy, and the desperate hope that someday, other species would evolve to carry on their legacy. Through the visions, they learned that the Primarchs had not simply vanished. They had transcended physical existence, becoming beings of pure consciousness that existed in the quantum substrate of reality itself. Before their transformation, they had scattered archives like this one throughout the galaxy, waiting for species advanced enough to access their knowledge. "We're not the first to find this place," Serafina said, her voice distant as the visions continued to flow through them. "Others have been here before us, representatives of dozens of species over the millennia." Marcus nodded, understanding flowing through him as if it had always been there. But none of them could fully access the archive. It requires something specific, a perfect symbiosis between two compatible consciousness patterns. As the realization hit them both, the implications became clear. The ancient technology hadn't simply detected their presence, it had recognized the unique nature of their developing bond. The sanguinary ability to link with other beings, combined with human adaptability and curiosity, created exactly the kind of consciousness fusion the Primarchs had designed their archives to respond to. "The wager," Marcus said softly, as understanding dawned. "It was never about winning or losing, was it?" Serafina's mental presence in the bond radiated something that felt like amused resignation. "I suspected as much when you first proposed it. The circumstances were too perfect to be coincidental. A human scientist arriving on the station just as I was growing tired of my isolation. The discovery of the archive shortly after we began forming a connection. You think the Primarchs somehow orchestrated this?" "I think the Primarchs understood that evolution doesn't just apply to biology," Serafina replied. "Consciousness itself evolves, and sometimes that evolution requires cooperation between very different kinds of minds." The visions shifted, showing them glimpses of other bonded pairs who had accessed Primarch archives across the galaxy. Some were successful, achieving a synthesis that unlocked incredible knowledge and abilities. Others failed, unable to maintain the delicate balance required for true symbiosis. Marcus felt a moment of fear as he realized the stakes of what they were experiencing. The bond between them was still forming, still fragile. If they couldn't achieve the perfect balance the archive required, the feedback could destroy both their minds. "I'm scared," he admitted through their connection. "So am I," Serafina replied, her mental voice carrying centuries of vulnerability she had never shared with anyone. "But I'm more afraid of spending eternity alone than I am of the risk we're taking." The archive seemed to respond to their emotional honesty, the visions becoming clearer and more detailed. They saw the true purpose of the Primarch technology, not just to preserve knowledge but to facilitate the evolution of consciousness itself. The archives were designed to identify and nurture partnerships that could carry civilization forward to the next stage of development. "We have to choose," Marcus realized. Accept the bond completely and access whatever the archive wants to show us, or disconnect now and lose this opportunity forever. Through their mental link, he could feel Serafina weighing the decision. 3 centuries of careful self-preservation warred with a longing for connection she had never allowed herself to fully acknowledge. If we do this, she said slowly, there's no going back. We'll be bonded for as long as either of us exists, sharing everything. My lifespan will become yours, but your humanity will become mine as well. Marcus thought of his quiet life back on Earth, the safe predictability of his former existence. Then he thought of the wonders they had already discovered together, the way Serafina's ancient wisdom complemented his human curiosity, the feeling of completeness he experienced when their minds touched. I choose the bond, he said firmly. I choose you. And I choose you, Serafina replied, her mental voice carrying a warmth he had never felt before. As they made their decision, the archive responded with a pulse of energy that flowed through both of them. Marcus felt his consciousness expand, touching not just Serafina's mind but the vast network of knowledge the Primarchs had left behind. At the same time, he felt Serafina's presence become a permanent part of his being, her memories and experiences interweaving with his own. The sensation was overwhelming but not frightening. Instead of losing himself, Marcus felt as though he was becoming more than he had ever been before. Through the bond, he could sense Serafina experiencing the same transformation, her ancient perspective enriched by his human capacity for wonder and growth. When the energy pulse faded, they found themselves back in the chamber, still standing before the floating sphere, but everything had changed. They were no longer 2 separate beings who happened to share a connection. They were a new form of consciousness altogether, one that combined the best aspects of both their species. How do you feel? Marcus asked, though he could sense the answer through their perfected bond. Complete, Serafina replied, her red eyes now carrying a warmth that hadn't been there before. For the first time in 3 centuries, I feel complete. The transformation was both subtle and profound. Outwardly, Marcus and Serafina appeared unchanged as they explored the deeper chambers of the Primarch archive. But the bond between them had evolved into something far more sophisticated than either had imagined possible. They moved in perfect synchronization, each instinctively understanding what the other was thinking and feeling. Through the enhanced connection, Marcus found himself accessing memories and knowledge that spanned centuries. He could recall Serafina's first journey to the edge of known space, her lonely decades exploring dead worlds, and her growing certainty that she would never find another being who could truly understand her. At the same time, Serafina experienced the intensity of human emotion and curiosity, feeling what it was like to approach each new discovery with fresh wonder, rather than jaded familiarity. The archive is responding to our completed bond, Serafina observed as they entered a chamber filled with floating crystalline data cores. It's unlocking information that was previously sealed. Marcus nodded, his enhanced perception allowing him to interpret the energy patterns flowing around them. Look at this, he said, gesturing toward a particular cluster of crystals. These aren't just historical records, they're active research projects the Primarchs were working on before their transcendence. The data cores revealed secrets that could revolutionize galactic civilization, advanced propulsion systems that could cross the galaxy in days rather than years, medical technologies that could extend any species' lifespan indefinitely, and methods for achieving perfect harmony between organic and artificial intelligence. But more than that, they contained philosophical frameworks for managing the ethical implications of such powerful knowledge. They learned from their mistakes, Serafina said softly, her mental voice carrying echoes of ancient sadness. The Primarchs nearly destroyed themselves with their early technologies. These safeguards are designed to prevent other species from repeating their errors. Through their bond, Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling over both of them. They weren't just explorers who had stumbled upon ancient knowledge. They were being chosen as guardians and disseminators of information that could shape the future of countless civilizations. We can't keep this to ourselves, Marcus realized. But we also can't just release everything at once. The galaxy isn't ready for technologies this advanced, which is exactly why the archive chose us, Serafina replied. It needed guardians who could balance wisdom with curiosity, caution with progress. Your human drive for exploration combined with my centuries of experience in the consequences of power. As they continued to explore, they discovered that the archive contained more than just technical knowledge. Hidden within its deepest layers were detailed profiles of every spacefaring species the Primarchs had encountered, along with predictions about how those species might evolve given the right guidance and resources. Humanity's profile was particularly fascinating. The Primarchs had classified humans as a catalyst species, beings whose greatest strength lay not in any single ability, but in their capacity to inspire growth and change in others. Humans, according to the ancient analysis, had an unique talent for forming unexpected alliances and finding innovative solutions to seemingly impossible problems. That's why the bond worked so well between us, Marcus said as he absorbed the information. Humans are natural symbionts. We've been forming partnerships with other species throughout our history, first with animals, then with artificial intelligences, and now with beings like you. The Sanguinari profile revealed them to be preservation specialists, a species designed by evolution to maintain stability and continuity across vast spans of time. Their long lifespans and powerful abilities made them ideal guardians of knowledge and culture, but their isolation often prevented them from adapting to changing circumstances. Together, we represent something the Primarchs hoped to see, Serafina observed. A partnership that combines preservation with innovation, stability with growth. But their exploration was interrupted by an unexpected development. The archive's external sensors detected approaching ships, a small fleet of vessels bearing the distinctive energy signatures of Sanguinari military craft. My people, Serafina said, tension flowing through their bond. Someone must have detected the archive's activation and reported it to the Council of Elders. Marcus felt her fear through their connection, not for herself, but for what her people might do if they discovered the extent of the knowledge contained within the archive. The Sanguinari, for all their advanced capabilities, were extremely conservative when it came to ancient technologies. Their standard response to Primarch ruins was to seal them away indefinitely. They'll try to claim the archive, Serafina explained, as they watched the ships take up defensive positions around the installation. The Council believes that such powerful knowledge should be controlled by those wise enough to use it responsibly. And they don't think other species qualify? Marcus asked. The Council's position is that most species are too young and reckless to handle Primarch technology safely, Serafina replied. They're not entirely wrong. We've seen civilizations destroy themselves with weapons far less powerful than what's contained here. Through the archive's communication systems, they received a transmission from the lead Sanguinari vessel. The voice that emerged was ancient and authoritative, carrying the weight of millennia. Lady Serafina Vex, you will withdraw from the installation immediately and submit to Council authority. The artifact will be secured pending proper evaluation by qualified personnel. Marcus felt anger surge through their bond, not just his own but Serafina's as well. The dismissive tone and automatic assumption of authority rankled both of them. Qualified personnel, Serafina muttered, as if 3 centuries of experience and direct selection by the archive itself doesn't qualify me. What do you want to do? Marcus asked, though he could already sense her decision through their bond. Something I should have done long ago, Serafina replied with grim determination. Stand up to them. She activated the archive's communication system and responded to the Council's demand. Elder Vorthak, I acknowledge your authority over Sanguinari space and citizens. However, this installation lies in neutral territory, and I am operating here as an independent researcher in partnership with the human scientific community. Your partnership with the human is irrelevant. The Elder's voice crackled back. You remain subject to Council jurisdiction regardless of your location. Surrender the installation or face the consequences of your defiance. Marcus watched as Serafina's expression hardened into something he had never seen before, the look of a predator pushed too far. Through their bond, he felt her 3 centuries of accumulated frustration with her people's rigid hierarchy and conservative policies. Then, I formally renounce my citizenship and claim sanctuary under the Archive Accords, Serafina announced, her voice carrying across the communication channel with absolute authority. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus could feel the shock radiating from the Sanguinari ships as they processed her unprecedented declaration. The Archive Accords? Marcus asked quietly. An ancient treaty signed by all major spacefaring civilizations, Seraphina explained through their bond. It grants special status to individuals selected by Primarch installations as guardians. I'm claiming the right to remain here as the Archive's chosen protector. Can you do that? I just did, Seraphina replied with a slight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Though it means I can never return to Sanguinari, space without facing charges of treason. Marcus felt the weight of what she had just sacrificed for their partnership and the knowledge they had discovered together. She had given up her entire civilization, her people, her history, everything except their bond. I'm sorry, he said softly. Don't be, Seraphina replied, reaching out to take his hand. I've spent 3 centuries serving a council that values control over progress. It's time I chose my own path. The elder's voice returned, colder now and filled with barely controlled rage. Very well, Seraphina Vex, you have made your choice. But know that the council will not forget this betrayal. The archive will be monitored, and any attempt to disseminate its contents will be met with appropriate action. As the Sanguinari ships withdrew to establish a distant perimeter around the installation, Marcus and Seraphina found themselves truly alone together, for the first time since their bond had formed. They were no longer just a human scientist and a Sanguinari noble. They were the guardians of knowledge that could reshape the galaxy, partners who had chosen each other over everything they had known before. So, Marcus said as he watched the ships take up their surveillance positions, what do we do now? Seraphina's smile was genuine this time, carrying warmth and determination in equal measure. Now we figure out how to change the galaxy without starting a war. The months that followed their confrontation with the Sanguinari Council transformed both Marcus and Seraphina in ways neither had anticipated. Living within the Primarch archive was like existing at the heart of a vast library that responded to their thoughts and needs. The installation provided everything necessary for survival while they worked to understand and organize the incredible wealth of knowledge they had become guardians of. Their bond had evolved beyond anything either species had previously experienced. Marcus found that his consciousness now naturally existed in 2 states simultaneously. His individual human perspective and a shared awareness that included Seraphina's memories and insights. Rather than feeling like an invasion or loss of identity, it felt like becoming a more complete version of himself. Seraphina, meanwhile, discovered that experiencing the galaxy through human eyes had rekindled a sense of wonder she hadn't felt in centuries. Through Marcus's perspective, even familiar phenomena became sources of fascination rather than mundane observations. Look at this, Marcus called out from where he was studying a particularly complex data core. The information it contained dealt with something the Primarchs called consciousness cultivation, methods for helping species develop their mental and spiritual capabilities in harmony with technological advancement. Seraphina approached, and through their bond, Marcus shared his excitement about the discovery. The technique described could potentially help any species develop abilities similar to their own bond, creating partnerships that transcended the limitations of individual consciousness. This could be the key, Seraphina said softly. Not just sharing the Primarch's technology, but helping other species develop the wisdom to use it responsibly. Their work was interrupted by an incoming transmission from Station Nix 7. Dr. Tanaka's concerned face appeared on the archive's communication display, her expression relief when she saw them both. Marcus, Seraphina, thank the void you're both all right. We've been getting reports of Sanguinari military movements in the system, and there were rumors about some kind of confrontation. We're fine, Yuki, Marcus assured her. Better than fine, actually. We've made some incredible discoveries, but the situation is complicated. Through the open channel, Marcus and Seraphina explained what they had found, and the choice Seraphina had made to protect their access to the archive. Dr. Tanaka listened with growing amazement as they described the Primarch knowledge and its implications for galactic civilization. This is incredible, Dr. Tanaka breathed. But if the Sanguinari Council is opposed to sharing this information, how do you plan to get it to the species that could benefit from it? Carefully, Seraphina replied. The Council's concerns about premature technological advancement aren't entirely unfounded. We need to find ways to share knowledge that won't destabilize existing civilizations. It was Marcus who suggested the solution that would define their future approach. What if we start small? Instead of trying to revolutionize everything at once, we could establish a research partnership with Station NIC 7, share specific technologies and techniques that address immediate problems without revealing the full scope of what we've found. The idea evolved over the following weeks into something more ambitious. Marcus and Serafina would become the core of a new kind of research institution, one dedicated to gradually introducing Primarch knowledge to the galaxy in ways that promoted stability and growth, rather than chaos. Their first test came when a medical emergency struck Station NIC 7. A virulent pathogen had infected several crew members, and conventional treatments were proving ineffective. The station's medical facilities were overwhelmed, and quarantine procedures were failing to contain the spread. "We can help," Marcus told Dr. Tanaka during an emergency consultation. "The archive contains medical technologies that could neutralize the pathogen and prevent future outbreaks. But the Sanguinari ships are still monitoring us," Dr. Tanaka pointed out. "If they detect advanced technology being transmitted to the station, they might interpret it as a hostile act." Serafina smiled with predatory satisfaction. "Then we'll have to be creative about how we share the information." What followed was a masterpiece of subtle manipulation and careful planning. Instead of directly transmitting the medical technology, Marcus and Serafina began sending seemingly routine research data to the station's laboratories. Buried within statistical analyses and theoretical papers were subtle hints and suggestions that would guide the station's medical team toward developing the necessary treatments themselves. Dr. Chen, the station's chief medical officer, began reporting breakthrough insights that seemed to come from nowhere. New synthesis techniques that dramatically improved drug efficacy, novel approaches to pathogen detection that caught infections before symptoms appeared, and treatment protocols that combined existing medications in ways that produced miraculous results. "It's like having the best intuition in the galaxy," Dr. Chen reported during one of their consultations. "Every time I think I've hit a dead end, I find myself considering approaches I never would have thought of before." The pathogen crisis was resolved within days, and the techniques developed during the emergency proved applicable to dozens of other medical challenges. Station NIC 7 quickly gained a reputation as a center for innovative medical research, attracting scientists and doctors from across the local sector. More importantly, the success demonstrated that Primarch knowledge could be shared safely when properly integrated with existing understanding, rather than simply imposed from above. The recipients felt ownership of their discoveries because they had participated in developing them, making them more likely to use the knowledge responsibly. "We're not just sharing information," Marcus observed during one of their planning sessions. "We're teaching people to think in new ways, helping them develop the kind of consciousness that can handle advanced technology safely." Word of Station NIC 7's remarkable medical advances eventually reached other research institutions, and Marcus found himself fielding inquiries from scientists across human space. Each contact represented a potential new partnership, another opportunity to gradually seed advanced knowledge throughout the galaxy. The Sanguinari Council, meanwhile, watched these developments with growing suspicion. Elder Vorthak sent increasingly stern warnings about unauthorized technology transfer, but the subtle nature of Marcus and Serafina's approach made it difficult to prove any violations of galactic law. "They know what we're doing," Serafina observed after reviewing the latest council communication. "But they can't stop us without proving that the knowledge we're sharing actually comes from Primarch sources. How long do you think we have before they try something more direct?" Marcus asked. "Not long," Serafina replied grimly. "The council has never been patient with beings who challenge their authority. They'll eventually decide that stopping us is more important than maintaining legal pretenses." Their prediction proved accurate sooner than expected. 6 months after the medical crisis, long-range sensors detected a massive Sanguinari battle fleet approaching the system. This wasn't a monitoring force or diplomatic mission. It was an armada capable of sterilizing entire worlds. Final warning: Elder Vorthak's transmission crackled through the archive's communication system. "Cease all research activities and surrender the installation, or face the consequences of your continued defiance." Marcus felt Serafina's anger through their bond, along with something else. A fierce protectiveness that reminded him that his partner was, at her core, still an apex predator. The Council's threats weren't just directed at the archive or their research, they were threatening Marcus himself. And that had awakened instincts in Serafina that she had kept carefully controlled for centuries. "They're making a mistake," she said quietly, her red eyes gleaming with dangerous light. "They think they're dealing with a rogue sanguinari and her human pet. They have no idea what we've actually become." Through their bond, Marcus felt the vast network of knowledge and capability they had access to through the archive. The Primarchs hadn't just left behind scientific data, they had included defensive technologies that could protect their installations from any conventional threat. "What are you thinking?" Marcus asked, though he could sense the dangerous turn of her thoughts. "I'm thinking," Serafina replied with a smile that was all predator, "that it's time the Council learned why the Primarchs chose us as guardians rather than them." As the Sanguinari fleet closed in on their position, Marcus and Serafina prepared to defend not just themselves and their research, but the future of galactic civilization itself. The real test of their partnership was about to begin. The final confrontation came not as Marcus and Serafina had expected, but as a revelation that changed everything they thought they knew about their situation. As the Sanguinari battle fleet took up attack positions around the Primarch archive, the ancient installation's deepest systems activated for the first time since their arrival. The archive's central chamber filled with holographic projections, showing not just the approaching ships, but the entire galactic region around them. Marcus and Serafina watched in amazement, as the display revealed dozens of similar installations throughout the sector, all of them now coming online in response to the threat. "The archives are networked," Marcus breathed, understanding flooding through him. "This isn't just one installation. It's part of a galaxy-spanning system." Through their bond, Serafina shared his awe and growing comprehension. The Primarchs didn't just leave behind individual repositories of knowledge. They created a distributed consciousness that's been waiting for the right time to reactivate. As if responding to their realization, the archive's communication systems opened channels to installations across the galaxy. Suddenly, Marcus and Serafina found themselves in contact with other guardian pairs, beings from dozens of different species who had formed bonds similar to their own and been chosen to protect Primarch knowledge. "Welcome to the network," came a warm mental voice that seemed to speak directly to their consciousness. "I am Zaravel, bonded guardian of Archive Tertius in the Andorian Spiral. My partner Kex and I have been waiting centuries for more guardians to join us." Other voices followed, partnerships between energy beings and crystalline entities, hive minds bonded with artificial intelligences, even a few human-alien pairs like themselves. Each had discovered their archive during moments of crisis, formed deep bonds with their partners, and spent years gradually introducing Primarch knowledge to their local regions of space. "The Sanguinari Council has been aware of us for some time," another guardian explained. "They've systematically attempted to suppress the archive network, believing that only they are qualified to determine how ancient knowledge should be used." Through the network connection, Marcus learned that the current crisis was not unique. Similar confrontations had occurred throughout the galaxy as the Council tried to maintain their monopoly on advanced technology. Some archives had been successfully defended, others had been sealed away or destroyed, and several guardian pairs had been captured or killed. "But this time is different," Zaravel continued. "Your activation has brought the network to critical mass. We finally have enough active archives to implement the Primarch's contingency protocol." The implications hit Marcus and Serafina simultaneously through their bond. They weren't just researchers who had stumbled upon ancient knowledge. They were the final piece of a plan that had been in motion for millions of years. The Primarchs had anticipated that their legacy would eventually face suppression by conservative forces, and they had built safeguards to ensure that knowledge would ultimately prevail over fear. "What happens now?" Serafina asked, though she could sense the answer forming in the network consciousness. "Now we give the galaxy a choice," replied the voice of an ancient guardian whose bond had existed for millennia. The Primarchs always intended for their knowledge to be freely shared when the time was right. That time has come. The archive network began to activate systems that had lain dormant since the Primarch's transcendence. Across the galaxy, installations came online and began broadcasting carefully prepared messages to every spacefaring civilization. The transmissions contained not raw technology that could be dangerous in the wrong hands, but educational frameworks that would help species develop the wisdom to use advanced knowledge responsibly. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Within hours, research institutions across the galaxy reported breakthrough insights in fields ranging from medicine to engineering to philosophy. Scientists who had been struggling with fundamental problems suddenly found themselves understanding solutions that had eluded them for decades. More importantly, the transmissions included detailed explanations of the ethical frameworks necessary to handle advanced technology safely. Species received not just the means to achieve greater power, but the wisdom to use it for the benefit of all life. The Sanguinari Council's response was swift and predictable. Elder Vorthak's fleet opened fire on the archive, unleashing weapons capable of destroying small moons. But the installation's defensive systems, powered by the same zero-point technology that had maintained it for millions of years, absorbed the assault without suffering any damage. "Your interference ends now," Elder Vorthak's voice boomed across communication channels. "The galaxy is not ready for Primarch technology. We will not allow you to destabilize galactic civilization." It was Marcus who responded, his voice carrying through the network to reach every archive and every spacefaring civilization simultaneously. "The galaxy has been ready for centuries," he said calmly. "You've simply been too afraid to let it prove that readiness." Through the bond, Serafina shared his determination as he continued. "The Primarchs understood something you've forgotten, that wisdom comes not from hoarding knowledge, but from learning to share it responsibly. Every species deserves the chance to grow and evolve, to make their own choices about their future." The galaxy listened as the human scientist and his sanguinary partner spoke directly to billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. Their message was simple: knowledge belonged to all life, not to those who claimed the right to control it. "Look around you," Serafina added, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had lived for centuries, but chose growth over stagnation. "In just a few hours, we've seen more scientific advancement than the galaxy has experienced in decades. Not because we've given anyone dangerous weapons, but because we've helped them understand principles they were already capable of discovering." The response from across the galaxy was overwhelming. Messages of support flooded in from research institutions, governments, and individual scientists who had spent their lives pushing against the artificial limitations imposed by conservative forces. Species that had been held back by lack of resources or understanding suddenly found themselves capable of achievements they had only dreamed of. Even within the Sanguinari fleet, Marcus and Serafina could sense growing uncertainty. Through the network, they learned that many of the younger Sanguinari had long questioned the Council's restrictive policies. The demonstration of what was possible when knowledge flowed freely was causing cracks in the monolithic authority the Elders had maintained for millennia. "This ends now," Elder Vorthak transmitted one final time, his voice carrying desperation as well as rage. "If we cannot control the dissemination of this knowledge, we will prevent it entirely." The Sanguinari fleet began charging weapons capable of causing stellar collapse, devices that could destroy the entire system rather than allow the archive network to continue its mission. But they had underestimated both the Primarchs' foresight and the galaxy's readiness to defend its newfound freedom. Ships from dozens of species began arriving in the system, not to attack, but to interpose themselves between the Sanguinari fleet and the archive. The galaxy had decided, and it chose knowledge over control, growth over stagnation. Stand down came a transmission from a coalition of galactic governments. "The Archive Accords are hereby reaffirmed and expanded. Any attack on a Primarch installation or its guardians will be considered an act of war against all signatories." Faced with unified opposition from the rest of galactic civilization, Elder Vorthak's fleet finally withdrew. The age of sanguinary control over ancient knowledge was ending, replaced by a new era of cooperation and shared discovery. As the crisis passed, Marcus and Serafina found themselves no longer isolated guardians, but part of a galaxy-wide community dedicated to the responsible advancement of all life. Their wager had begun as a simple challenge between two individuals, but it had evolved into something that would reshape the future of civilization itself. "So," Marcus said as they watched the peaceful resolution unfold around them, "I think we can finally declare our wager officially resolved." Serafina laughed, the sound carrying joy and contentment through their eternal bond. "And who do you think won?" Marcus considered the question seriously. He had set out to win her heart and she had sought to claim his. Instead, they had become something neither could have imagined. Partners in the truest sense, guardians of knowledge and catalysts for galactic transformation. I think, he said finally, pulling her close as they stood together in the heart of ancient wisdom. We both did. Their bond pulsed with shared understanding and endless possibility. They were linked for eternity, not as master and servant or predator and prey, but as equals who had chosen to face the infinite mysteries of the universe together. The galaxy spread out before them, vast and full of wonders yet to be discovered, and they would explore it all as one consciousness with two perspectives, forever.